I'm here with a typical vagabond. I also write for Blue Tegu, and today what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the new MacBook Pro model. I'm sure that you've seen it, hence why you're probably here wanting to find out what my opinion is on the MacBook Pro. So if you're not sure which MacBook Pro model you should buy, let me help you in the purchasing process. I was a bit confused and wondered if I should purchase the 14-inch model MacBook Pro or the 16-inch. If you are not sure which MacBook Pro model you should buy, let me help you in the purchasing process. I was a bit confused and wondered if I should purchase the 14-inch MacBook Pro or the 16-inch MacBook Pro. So in the late 21, Apple announced a major update for its high-end MacBook Pro models, as you're probably already aware. With these new machines featured a completely new, redesigned M1 Pro and M1 Max chips. The larger mini LED screens with Pro Motion, an HDMI port, an SD card slot, and full-size function keys and more. The redesigned MacBook Pro is available in a 14-inch and 16-inch model. So despite both being high-end models, the 14 and 16-inch models do have some different design aspect, features, and capabilities. So you should consider purchasing the smaller MacBook Pro, which starts at $1,999. Or do you need the larger MacBook Pro, which costs at least $500 more? At least these are the questions that came into my mind. I'm just kind of confused, as I said earlier. So this guide here is just basically here to help you decide which of these two high-end MacBook Pros is best for you. For me, I ultimately went with a 14-inch MacBook Pro model. So let me break down the similarities, differences, to help you decide which MacBook Pro is best for you. So comparing the 14-inch and the 16-inch MacBook Pro models, they share most of all the key features such as display technology, chip configurations, and connectivity options. Apple lists these same features of the two machines. The main differences for the 14-inch model MacBook Pro is that it has a 14.2-inch display, 8-core CPU, and a 14-core GPU. It is 6.61 inches thick, and it weighs in at 3.5 pounds. And the battery has an integrated 70-watt-hour lithium polymer battery, which allows you to have 17 hours of battery life when playing back video, which is pretty nice. Then it also has the fast charging over a MagSafe 3 or the Thunderbolt 4. It also has a 96-watt USB-C power adapter with the M1 Pro processor. It also has the 96-watt USB-C power adapter with M1 Pro, and it has the 10-core CPU or M1 Max configurable with the M1 Pro with 8-core CPU. The 16-inch Mac, it has the 16.2-inch display with the high power mode to boost the M1 Max performance. So you get a little more bang for the buck on your processor, even though these things are going to look almost identical. It comes stocked with a 10-core CPU and a 16-core GPU, and it is 0.66 inches thick, and it weighs considerably more at 4.7 pounds. The battery in the 16-inch MacBook Pro has an integrated 100-watt lithium polymer battery, which allows you to have 21 hours of battery life when playing back video, so pretty excellent. It also has the fast charging over the MagSafe 3, and that's all that it has. But this USB-C power adapter on the 16-inch model has 140 watts. The most apparent difference between the two MacBook Pro models is the display size. The exact display sizes are 14.2 inches and 16.2 inches. The 16.2-inch display will better replace a desktop machine and provide more screen space to arrange multiple windows. Professional applications that benefit from the additional display are ideal for the 16-inch Mac, they say, but the 14-inch display is still more prominent than the 13.3 MacBook Air or the MacBook Air Pro models that you'd seen in the previous years. And overall, it'll likely be the best overall balance of needs for most users if you've gone for the 13-inch model. Then on the models of the MacBook Pro, there is a little black notch up towards the top that contains a webcam, and it does eat up a little bit of the display space slightly, and it occurs on both of these models. And it's one of the things that's a little bit different than the previous MacBook Pro models. So there is still more of a display area overall. In addition, the display area below the notch has an aspect ratio of precisely 16:10, just like previous MacBook Pro models, to ensure that the gap does not impede average display views or watching media. If you are concerned about the notch, you shouldn't necessarily feel obligated to get the more significant 16-inch MacBook Pro. Since the space is the same size on both models, it might be slightly less noticeable on the 16-inch, but it's not something that's really going to be a deal breaker. For the overall design, the 16-inch model is of course physically larger than the 14-inch model, with a markedly bigger overall footprint. It is also worth noting that the 16-inch model is also 0.13 centimeters thicker and 1.2 pounds heavier. The 14-inch MacBook Pro will be more portable and comfortable than the 16-inch model. The 14-inch MacBook Pro model will be more portable and comfortable than the 16-inch model to carry around daily. The 16-inch MacBook Pro will still fit in large bags and be acceptable during slightly more infrequent travel. It is much larger. It is a much larger, heavier machine. Considering the 16-inch MacBook Pro, you should be comfortable with its greater size and weight. One thing to consider with these models when you're building out your MacBook Pro is to look at the M1 Pro configurations. Both the 14 and 16-inch models are equally upgradable to the M1 Max chip with a 10-core CPU and 32-core GPU. But if you're looking to spend a little less as possible or do not need the extra performance, it is worth noting the difference between the chips of the base configuration. The base configuration of the 14-inch MacBook Pro features an M1 Pro with 8-core CPU and a 14-core GPU, while the base 16-inch model contains an M1 Pro with a 10-core CPU and 16-core GPU. If you upgrade the 14-inch model to the same M1 Pro and 10-core CPU and 16-core GPU that the 16-inch model starts with, it increases to $2,299, just $200 less than the starting price of the 16-inch model. For those leaning towards buying the 16-inch Model Pro and needing the M1 Pro and a 10-core CPU and a 16-core GPU at the minimum, the price difference. For those leaning towards buying the 16-inch MacBook Pro and needing the M1 Pro with a 10-core CPU and 16-core GPU at a minimum, the price difference between the two models is just $200. Might make it easier to justify getting the larger model. On the other hand, if you do not need the performance of the M1 Pro with a 10-core CPU and 16-core GPU, the 16 model may be overkill, and getting the 14-inch model will be the best way to curb the price under these circumstances. The big difference when you're talking about like these CPUs on the 16-inch model and the 14-inch machine is what they call high power mode. And the only thing that you do with the high power mode is that you move it into a specific setting and it increases the power. The 16-inch MacBook Pro with the M1 Max chip offers a high power mode software feature. The high power mode boosts the machine's performance for intensive, sustained workloads when it's enabled. And according to Apple, the higher power mode is designed to optimize performance to support resource-intensive tasks, such as color grading 8K ProRes video, which is pretty much insane. Though, if that's something that your clients are needing, yes, you're gonna probably need to have the 16-inch model and pop it over to the high power mode. The when enabled high power mode will deprioritize resource-hungry system processes to leverage the full performance of the M1 Max processor. Overall, high power mode, the setting is effectively the opposite of the lower power mode, which aims to decrease system performance in favor of prolonging battery life. The 14-inch MacBook Pro does not feature high power mode, so if you want the ability to push the M1 Max chip to its limits, you'll need to buy the 16-inch model. The battery life, owing it to its larger size, the 16-inch MacBook Pro contains a larger battery and longer lasting battery life. The 14-inch model includes a 70 watt-hour battery, while the 16-inch model includes a 100 watt-hour battery. In terms of battery life, Apple says the 14-inch MacBook Pro can deliver up to 17 hours of battery life when playing back video. The 16-inch model adds 4 hours for a 21-hour battery life when playing back video. The 16-inch model will be better for the maximum battery life, but the 14-inch model 17-hour battery life is still perfect and 7 hours longer than the model that it replaced. The 14-inch MacBook Pro uses a 67 watt or 96 watt USB-C power adapter, while a 16-inch model uses a 140 watt power adapter. Both models can use the MagSafe 3 port to fast charge, but it is also possible to fast charge the 14-inch model using one USB-C Thunderbolt 4 port. If you require the flexibility of being able to fast charge via USB-C, you'll need to buy the 14-inch model to have this functionality. My final thoughts on this. So the 16-inch MacBook Pro is $500 more than the 14-inch model on the base configuration. So you should be sure that the 16-inch model is what you need for the additional display area, battery life, and the high power mode capability to justify this. If you upgrade the 14-inch model to the same M1 Pro with 10-core CPU and 16-core GPU, then the 16 model starts with the price difference to shrink around $200. Buyers of the 16-inch model should be aware that it is considerably larger, thicker, and heavier than the 14-inch model. The 16-inch model may also provide slightly better performance than the 14-inch model due to being larger and potentially better. The 16-inch model may also provide slightly better performance performance in the 14-inch model due to it being larger with the potentially better thermals, but this is yet to be confirmed with any benchmark test. The 16-inch model speakers are also likely to provide slightly better sound quality to the device just due to the larger size. The 14-inch MacBook Pro is more portable than the 16-inch just due to its size being smaller. The 14-inch MacBook Pro is a more portable machine than the 16-inch model. So if you intend to carry the MacBook Pro around frequently or need the versatility of easily fitting it into a bag, smaller model will be a better option. Buyers of the 14-inch model are not missing out on any significant MacBook Pro features and gain the ability to fast charge using one of the machine's USB-C Thunderbolt 4 ports. As a result, most users will be better off buying the 14-inch model, with the device offering the best overall balance of price and form factor. For me, I plan to do plenty of traveling. Being a digital nomad, I find that having just a little bit less weight, granted it's a pound, but a pound here, a pound there saved, really helps out with one's stress levels traveling through airports, trains, and whatnot, just walking around. However, this means the weight could be an issue, like if you were wanting to have the 16-inch. I also have an iPad Pro, so the extra 2 inches of screen space to me was unnecessary when I considered that I can use the iPad in sidecar mode, and I have an extra 10 inches that I can work with on the screen. So it didn't matter if I was going to go with like the 16-inch or the 14-inch, I was still going to be bringing the iPad around with me. So it was something that I was planning, but when I was thinking about it, saving a couple $100 due to like 2 inches of screen space, it really was not something that I found necessary. Also, I do not need to max out the chipset that's on here. I find that when you're doing the maxing out of chips, it ends up degrading the chip by increasing the thermal paste on there. It dries it out, and then it's not able to cool as easily. And I have been working on the 14-inch model. So far after this purchase, I've done some heavy video editing. Granted, it has not been 8K videos, but I found that this MacBook Pro is handling all of what I need to do so far. I found that the new MacBook Pro 14-inch to be a significant upgrade to my previous MacBook Pro 16-inch. I also do not believe that the benefits of the 16-inch model MacBook Pro are going to be needed from my experience yet. I mean, granted, this could be something that changes in the next couple years as 8K, 16K, whatever is going to be down the pipeline. Maybe when something like that happens down the future, I might need to upgrade the model again to something that'll be able to handle that. But if that's the case, I'm probably going to need to invest maybe into the Mac Studio. But that's a bridge that I'll have to cross when if I run into any issues, I will tell you more about it. And if you have not subscribed yet, please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, it helps me out in the algorithms, and hit the bell to get notifications on the next videos that come out. Until then,